The city reports the lowest daily count in COVID-19 infections since mid-July. The U.S. suspends 3 bilateral agreements with Hong Kong. And in the U.S., Kamala Harris accepts the Democratic nomination for Vice President.
Hello and a very good evening. Hong Kong reported 18 new coronavirus cases today, the lowest daily count since mid-July. But health authorities believe the tally might be due to a delay in test results brought on by the typhoon.
Meanwhile, the death toll has gone up to 73 after one more elderly patient passed away. Jackie Lin reports.
For the second straight day, the city's daily COVID tally showed a notable retreat. Health authorities have been careful not to rush into labeling this a sign of controlling the outbreak.
The number of cases may be possibly related to the decreasing number of bottles collected during the typhoon.
In light of the trend, the government announced they will resume public services in phases starting Monday. 12 cases are linked to earlier infections. They include 3 more employees who worked at one key port operation services. 2 more Indonesian domestic workers also came down with the coronavirus. On the testing front, the hospital authority is extending the period for free COVID tests by 3 months. Anyone showing mild symptoms can get and submit specimen bottles at 22 general outpatient clinics. Since late July, 23,000 samples have been tested. Among them, 56 were found to be COVID positive. At least 14 passengers who boarded an Air India flight last Friday had the virus. The country's flagship carrier has now been banned from flying into Hong Kong for 2 weeks.
We think that the proportion is a bit too high for those who are supposed to be tested negative to come to Hong Kong. But there's also no fixed length of duration, how long you should stop this flight from coming to Hong Kong.
Some returnees from India who boarded that virus-stricken flight told us how easy it is for travelers there to get the virus.
We are very worried, very scared.
Your report is negative because you took it from 72 hours. But during your journey, maybe you are in touch with the COVID positive. Then maybe after you come Hong Kong, you are positive.
The former chairman of the Indian Association Hong Kong also expressed understanding for stricter control towards Indian airlines, but hopes the measures could be relaxed once the pandemic slows. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The government is offering free COVID-19 tests for fishermen, driving instructors today and Friday. The government hopes it could help ease troubles for fishermen who have to submit proof of negative virus tests within 72 hours before working in mainland waters. For private driving instructors and other employees at driving schools, self-sampling kits are available for collection at designated distribution points or through their companies.
In other news, both the Hong Kong and US governments have pulled the plug on extradition agreements following America's suspension of some treaties with the city yesterday. As Kana Chu reports, the SAR government believes the United States will ultimately bear most of the effects of its action.
In a latest tit-for-tat response, Beijing is halting Hong Kong's agreement with America to provide mutual legal assistance. This after the U.S. announced its unilateral decision Wednesday to suspend or terminate 3 bilateral agreements with the SAR. According to a government spokesperson, the act is widely seen as a move to create troubles in China-U.S. relationship using Hong Kong as a pawn.
Only the taxation agreement really hurts us. The others have no real impact. But because of the presidential elections coming in the U.S., clearly President Trump is playing the China card. So we could expect some more, measures to come.
Among the suspended pacts are 2 extradition treaties. The decision was slammed for undermining not only justice, but also humanitarian values by hampering convicts from serving their sentences in their places of origin, a practice conducive to rehabilitation. Ultimately, the SCR government expects the United States to bear greater impacts. This, as it noted the number of wanted criminals surrendered from Hong Kong to the U.S. is 3 times as many as those transferred from America to the SCR. Last month, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order revoking what was called a preferential treatment for Hong Kong under a variety of U.S. laws, including trade. But the SCR government spokesperson said that was rather a mutual agreement negotiated in good faith to benefit the people and businesses of both regions. By terminating an exemption agreement on shipping tax, increased operation costs are bound to be felt bilaterally. And U.S. firms in particular will be subject to double taxation. Concluding the statement, the SCR government urged its U.S. counterpart to immediately stop interfering in Hong Kong's internal affairs and retract its baseless allegations against the national security law for the city. Kana Chu, TVB News.
A trial began today for Next Digital founder Jimmy Lai, accused of criminal intimidation back in 2017. The hearing at the West Kowloon Magistrates Court is expected to last 3 days. The media tycoon is accused of threatening to physically harm a reporter from rival news outlet Oriental Daily. The reporter claims that happened at the end of June 4th candlelight vigil 3 years ago. He has seen a psychiatric doctor 3 times since then and was diagnosed with adjustment and anxiety disorder. The prosecution says Lai told police he recognized the reporter as the journalist had trailed him for years. Lai admitted he did hurl expletives but did not engage in any provocative actions towards the reporter. Well, US President Donald Trump has hailed Jimmy Lai as a brave man. The Apple Daily founder was recently arrested over charges related to the national security law.
He's certainly a brave man, and I send him best wishes. With that being said, because of that and obviously what happened in Hong Kong, we've taken all of the vast amounts of money that we used to subsidize Hong Kong. We essentially subsidized Hong Kong by giving them all sorts of incentives.
Kamala Harris has made history as the first American woman with Black and South Asian heritage to accept a spot on a major party's presidential ticket.
In her highly anticipated address, capping the 3rd night of the Democratic National Convention, Harris tried to make a compelling case for her and Joe Biden to be elected in the fall. Kamala Harris accepted the Democratic nomination for vice president, cementing her place in United States history as the first Black and South Asian woman on a major party ticket. She evoked the lessons of her late mother, a biologist and Indian immigrant, saying that she instilled in her a vision of our nation as a beloved community, where all are welcome, no matter what we look like, where we come from, or who we love. Harris promised that if elected in November, she and Joe Biden would rejuvenate a country ravaged by the pandemic and riven by racial and partisan divides.
While this virus touches us all, we got to be honest. It is not an equal opportunity offender. Black, Latino, and Indigenous people are suffering and dying disproportionately. And this is not a coincidence. It is the effect of structural racism, of inequities in education and technology, healthcare and housing, job security and transportation.
Her speech has showcased a party that has staked its future on bringing together a racially diverse coalition of voters while embracing a rainbow of identities, whether straight, gay, transgendered or gender neutral. Preceding Harris was former President Barack Obama, who broke with tradition and directly criticized his successor, Donald Trump.
I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously. But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe.
Well, the Trump administration is set to demand the restoration of all international sanctions against Iran in a move that will further isolate the United States at the United Nations.
When the United States entered into the Iran deal, it was clear that the United States would always have the right to restore the UN sanctions that will prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. We paid a fortune for a failed concept and a failed policy, a policy that would have made it impossible to have peace in the Middle East.
Later today, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will travel to New York to notify the world body that the U.S. is invoking the snapback mechanism in the Security Council resolution that endorsed the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. While the U.S. move faces steep opposition and could prompt a revolt from the Council's other members, none of them believes the U.S. has the standing to do it because Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal 2 years ago.
Military coup leaders in Mali made their first public address since they arrested President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta and forced him to step down. The junta leaders of the West African country announced they are calling themselves the National Committee for the Salvation of the People. They urged people to go back to work as normal. The soldiers also promised to organize new elections. The president resigned and dissolved parliament Tuesday after the mutineers held him at gunpoint. The mutineers denied reports of people being killed and wounded during the unrest. The United Nations Security Council and European Union leaders have condemned the mutiny. They have urged the soldiers to release all government officials. Welcome back. Belarus's President Alexander Lukashenko has threatened to bring criminal charges against opposition leaders.
This as protests over the result of the country's August 9th general election continue to escalate. Daniel Rao has more on this story.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko's latest threat comes after the European Union rejected official results of the country's recent general election, whilst pledging financial aid to anti-government activists.
On August 9th, Belarus held elections. These elections were neither free nor fair and did not meet international standards. We don't recognize the results presented by the Belarus authorities. The people of Belarus deserve better. The EU will impose shortly sanctions on a substantial number of individuals responsible for violence, repression and election fraud.
The European Commission will mobilise now an additional 53 million euros to support the Belarusian people in these challenging times.
Belarus has been engulfed by protests since the election, with many claiming the result was invalid. In the first 4 days of demonstrations, police detained almost 7,000 people, injuring hundreds more. Police have also been seen dispersing protesters gathered outside factories and theatres. Exiled opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who previously urged the EU to take action against Lukashenko, has now formed a coordination council. Among its demands include an end to political persecution, release of political prisoners, and non-recognition of the August 9th election result. Lukashenko, whose supporters staged counter-rallies amid the unrest, continues to accuse the West of fueling anti-government sentiment in Belarus. He has now called on Russian President Vladimir Putin for political support as domestic tensions reach boiling point. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny is in a coma in a Siberian hospital. His spokeswoman said his morning tea appeared to have been poisoned. A statement on Twitter says the 44-year-old fell ill on a flight back to Moscow from the Siberian city of Tomsk. Navalny is reportedly now in a coma and on a ventilator in an intensive care unit. He was hospitalized last year while serving a prison sentence after an administrative arrest. His team claims he was the victim of an attempted poisoning on that occasion as well. Doctors, however, said he suffered an allergic reaction and later discharged him back to prison.
Firefighters are battling hundreds of wildfires raging across northern California.
Thousands have been ordered to evacuate amid a blistering heat wave, and a pilot on a water-dropping mission has died. Leslie Tang has more.
California is under a state of emergency as firefighters try to beat back hundreds of blazes ravaging various areas in the northern part of the state. Thousands have been ordered to evacuate amid a blistering heat wave that is stretching into its second week. Police and firefighters frantically went door to door before dawn as the fire spread to Vacaville, which lies between San Francisco and Sacramento. Countless homes have been burnt to a crisp. Homeowner John Gardner stayed up all night after being alerted about an oncoming fire.
It's been burning all night. We're up in the hills. We just finished helping put out the fires at my two neighbors' place in the back. So we run down to take a look what's going on here, because this is my big concern. There's too much weeds growing on this property here. We're worried about the eucalyptus trees are going to catch fire, and then we have a disaster.
A combination of factors, including strong winds, contributed to the spread of the infernos.
We have seen wildfire activity as a consequence of this heat wave, as a consequence of all of these lightning strikes.
The state recorded nearly 11,000 lightning strikes in 72 hours. Authorities say one of the biggest threats is the formation of a cluster of about 23 fires, which are being pushed by winds into more populated areas and are merging with other fires. Ash and smoke filled the air over San Francisco, which is surrounded by at least 5 wildfires burning in multiple counties. Leslie Tang, TVB News.
Back locally, the High Court today has dismissed a judicial review filed by 5 activists to challenge the police's power to access their phones with court warrants. The 5 pro-democracy figures, including Martin Lee, were arrested last year in connection with anti-government demonstrations. The police later obtained search warrants to go through the contents of their phones. They argued that the search order provided a blanket permission to extract information. But a 2-judge panel dismissed the challenge, saying the warrants do not mean the police are given a license to scour the devices indiscriminately.
Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Law Chi-kwong, said there is no plan to introduce a 3rd tranche of the employment support scheme. Law stressed that firms should be prepared that the pandemic may last for a long time. So far, the government has received around 300 complaints about employers retaining all the subsidies from the scheme. Law said if employers fail to keep their promise of not sacking staff, they may not be getting a subsidy from the second round of the scheme.
The Democratic Party has announced it will conduct a public poll to decide whether or not to stay or leave for the extended LegCo term. The decision was made after conflicts emerged within the opposition camp on whether incumbent lawmakers should continue to serve in the extended LegCo term. Pan-Democrats earlier noted if they stay, it validates Beijing's decision to extend the current LegCo term for not less than 1 year, which is inconsistent with the 4-year term limit stated in the Basic Law. But Wu Chi-wai, chairman of the Democratic Party, stressed staying put will give the opposition camp the ability to delay passage of draconian laws and controversial funding requests.
I cannot represent all Pan-Democrat camp's members' response to our decisions, but they understand we made our proposals. We would like to have a debate so that all sides of the pros and cons can be expressed over the debate, so that people can have a full understanding on our rationale on whether to stay or to leave. The decision has to be made before September 30th, because that is our official terms of office.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Bye for now. Good night.